You're watching BionicDance. Don't run on automatic, instead, please think.
People often ask me, Andy, why do you keep calling atheism a religion? Isn't atheism just a lack of belief in God? It's not a religion.
That's right, it's not. And the only people I see calling it a religion are, frankly, the religious. Presumably because you want to try to catch us atheists in some sort of hypocrisy for criticizing religion. Newsflash, even if atheism is a religion, which it's not, that won't stop us from pointing out how mean, cruel, and out of touch with reality yours is. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. First, let me apologize for my appearance. I was sick a fair amount of yesterday and some of this morning, and I just couldn't be arsed to make myself look pretty. Now, meet Andy Bannister, who's convinced that atheism is a religion, but his reasons are terrible. Have a look.
Well, I'm afraid that's wrong. That actually the more you look at atheism, the more you realise it's far more than just the lack of a belief in God. Let me show you why. If atheism simply meant the absence of belief in God, the first problem is it would have some very peculiar entailments. It would mean that rocks, small kittens, rubber chickens, Richard Dawkins' left foot are all atheists.
And anybody who's known me for any length of time knows that I don't have a problem with that. The only way to not be an atheist is to believe in at least one God, to be a theist. That's what an atheist is. You see all those God believers over there? Well, we're not one of them. That makes us atheists. And if you don't think that's the case, then tell me, what is the word for all that don't fall into the God-believing demographic if atheist isn't it? How do we articulate that concept? And don't go telling me that it's non-theist. The prefixes a and non mean exactly the same thing. The only difference is one of them's Latin and the other one's Greek. So a non-theist is an atheist. Funny part, people used to really get on my case for taking this position, and yet years later I'm starting to see more and more people espouse it, even without my prompting. Funny that.
That's a very counterintuitive conclusion, and it strongly suggests that atheism is far more than just the absence of a belief in God. That can't be the definition.
So because you happen to find it counterintuitive, that can't be the definition? Really? And yet, how many things in life, or even just in language, happen to be counterintuitive? How about the word suffrage? Sounds horrible, doesn't it? And yet it means the right to vote. What chowderhead came up with that? Talk about counterintuitive. Or how about the word noisome? Sounds like something that's noisy, doesn't it? Nope, it means a bad smell. You'd think impregnable would be when a woman is most likely to conceive, but nope, it means something that's impossible to get into. Superfluous sure does sound like something awesome, and yet it describes something that's irrelevant or pointless. Lots of words are counterintuitive, and yet they mean what they mean. So if you think that the word atheism being applied far more broadly than you're comfortable with means that the definition has to be something else, well, you're 8 completely different flavors of wrong on that one, Skippy.
A second problem with the idea that atheism is merely the lack of belief in God is that if that were the case, how could it form part of someone's core identity?
Who says that it has to? I'm not a fan of 60s folk rock. Does that have to form a part of my identity? No. It's just something I'm not. Quite frankly, I think you're judging atheism by religious standards. Because atheism deals with religion, and because religion consumes and defines so much of a theist's life, therefore atheism must too. Right? Go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong, but that certainly seems to be what you're implying. But not being religious is no different than not being a fan of nature documentaries or not caring about professional hockey. It doesn't affect your identity, or at least it doesn't have to. It's just something you're not. Or it can affect your identity. I'll admit, as a YouTube atheist, I'm certainly quite outspoken about it. But I don't have to be. I could be quite the passive, who gives a shit non-believer. Those do exist, and atheism is not part of their core identity at all.
You see, I don't believe in Father Christmas. I don't believe in the Tooth Fairy. But I don't go around introducing myself to people as an A-Tooth Fairyan. That's not what you'll find on my Twitter profile. Yet I regularly meet people who introduce themselves to me as I am an atheist. It forms their core identity.
Once again, I have to ask, so, whether it's on your online profile or not, is it true? Does it accurately describe you? Many atheists feel the need to identify themselves as such because religion is brought up so often, because it so often intrudes upon our lives far more than the Easter Bunny ever will, and often in very unwelcome ways. But if religion were a passive, keep-it-to-yourself kind of thing, I think you'd find just as many atheists proclaiming themselves to be so as you'd find people declaring themselves non-Santa Clausians, which is to say, pretty much not at all. Unless asked. Thus, the frequency with which you hear people describe themselves by traits or positions they've taken has nothing at all to do with whether or not they're affiliated with some sort of organization. And even if it does form their core identity, so what? How does that make it a religion? I'm a weapons-grade fan of the band Roxette, with the tattoo to prove it. Does that make Roxette a religion? Am I a Roxettianite? Or are they just a band I totally dig like a backhoe? Yes, atheism is related to religion, but that's the only trait it shares in common with religion. Its category, the subject it addresses. But you have to have a way of describing not being part of the subject under discussion, don't you? That's atheism.
That's also demonstrated by my third piece of evidence, and it's that atheists and secularists are now starting churches.
Like the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Is your sense of humor broken?
Yeah, they really are. A few years ago in London, England, a group of atheists came together, took over a deconsecrated church in London, and they started something called the Sunday Assembly. They meet together on Sunday mornings, they sing secular songs, they listen to inspirational talks about science. They formed an atheist church.
Yeah. But if you look on their website, you know who started the Sunday Assembly? 2 comedians. And it also says that they used to be Christians and missed going to church on Sundays, even though they didn't believe in God. Their inspiration was because of previous religious experience. It was Christianity that made them start the Sunday Assembly, not atheism. Regardless, this is not representative of atheism. To say that it is would be like claiming that the Amish are representative of all Christianity. Different people are inspired in different ways. I started talking about atheism and religion largely in self-defense against unwanted religious intrusion into people's lives. Others have their own reasons for talking about it or not. You cannot reason from 1 to infinity, and you cannot judge atheism by the actions of only a few.
Now, I say that not to belittle my atheist friends, but just to encourage them to kind of wake up and smell the coffee. You see, if atheism is a belief system, there are some entailments that follow, and one of the biggest ones is this. If atheism is a religion or a belief system, you can't simply assume it. You have to give reasons for it, you have to give evidence.
Aha! Now we get to it. You want atheism to be a religion because you no longer wish to shoulder the burden of proof, or at least not all by yourself. That's where all of the evidence of your little speech points, and I have no shame in asserting with confidence that that's your motivation. Well, whether atheism is a religion or not will not get you out of the burden of proof, because that burden is always on the one who asserts that something is so, that something does exist. You'd have my sympathy if you weren't being so conniving. Proving a God is real can't be easy, especially when your religion demands that you have faith despite the complete lack of evidence. But since you're being such a brat about it, you have my scorn and derision instead.
Because if you're not willing to do that, you fall foul of an aphorism once coined by the late new atheist writer himself, Christopher Hitchens.
Uh-oh. Are you about to mess with the Hitch, bitch? It's time to lock and load.
Who in his book God Is Not Great wrote these words: "That which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence."
Way to quote mine there, Skippy. Hitch was talking about God. You religionoids claim that God is real, and yet you present no evidence of it, and thus your claims can be dismissed. And if the existence of God can be dismissed, then all that's left is atheism. And you're trying to force atheism into the position of a religion in order to force atheists to prove that God isn't real. Newsflash, Chester. Even if atheists can't prove that God isn't real, that doesn't mean that your religion wins by default. You still have to prove your own case, or your religion remains just as unsupported and just as unjustifiable. As you said, wake up and smell the coffee.
That applies to Christianity, but my word, does it apply to atheism too? I would suggest that my atheist friends take his advice.
You see what I mean? He might just as well have said, "I know you are, but what am I?" and been done with it. And I'm spent. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please, think. Ignorance killed the cat. Curiosity was framed.